Chapter 12 begins with Denver remembering the kind of hunger she had before Beloved came. And the hunger she used to have was a hunger for company. Remember, she was so alone. They were so isolated in that house at 124. Well, now her hunger has changed. She has a hunger for just Beloved. She wants Beloved to see her and to interact with her. And that's what she craves every single day. And of course, Beloved is there, but Beloved has made it very clear that she cares about Sethe most. And so every now and then, Denver gets to just relish the feeling of having Beloved give her complete and total attention to Denver. And this does happen every now and then. Not very often, but every now and then. And so because Denver is so eager for Beloved to just pay attention to her, she starts to rearrange the day or sort of plan ways to stay active and involved with Beloved so that Beloved will pay attention to her. So remember, what Beloved typically does is as soon as Sethe leaves for work, Beloved just sort of waits for her, and as soon as it gets close to when Sethe would be coming home, Beloved wants to go outside and meet her. And so Denver is trying to keep her occupied so that they can have a better relationship like sisters. And that's what's discussed in this first part. There's also a reference here to Sethe's interactions with Beloved. Like every now and then, Sethe starts to get curious, as she would, asking, where did you come from? Do you remember your mother? And they sort of talk about, Sethe says, well, I never knew my mother either, but, what do you remember about your past? And Beloved doesn't really give her any good answers because remember, Beloved truly is like a supernatural being here. She's a lot more than just the baby ghost, quite honestly, which we're going to be able to see in this chapter. So Sethe kind of starts to create her own explanations for Beloved's presence and Beloved's past. She tells Denver that she thinks that Beloved had been locked up by some white man for his own purposes and never let out of the door, that she must have escaped to a bridge or someplace and rinsed the rest out of her mind, that she's like blocked out her past because she's been traumatized, and that she was basically used as a sex slave by some white master. That's what Sethe imagines, and that's because Sethe knows of another slave named Ella who that very thing happened to. Ella remembered every bit, but, it would be reasonable to think that somebody, especially someone as young as Beloved, would block it out. So this is Sethe's explanation. And what's interesting is that Denver never corrects Sethe's speculation. She doesn't even make any sort of comment about it, but she does not believe it. Denver is very, very certain that Beloved was the white dress that had knelt with her mother in the keeping room, the true-to-life presence of the baby that had kept her company most of her life. So she believes that Beloved is the baby ghost come to life. And remember, this image of the white dress putting her arm around Sethe in the keeping room is something that Denver saw when she came back from playing in her little fort out in the clearing. And this is when she was much younger. And I just made a note here. Now it's interesting to me that that Beloved is not wearing a white dress like the image that Denver saw, but she's wearing a black dress, which just kind of reminds us that she's not entirely good necessarily. So this is just sort of explaining that Denver really is committed to this idea that Beloved is for sure the baby ghost. But she's also really careful not to ask a lot of questions of Beloved. She's really most afraid that Beloved's going to leave. And so she doesn't want to piss her off. That's part of her strategy there. She does not ask Denver does not ask Beloved how she knew about the earrings. She does not ask Beloved about the walks to the cold house. So she knows that she's going out to see Paul D in the cold house, and Denver doesn't ask her about that, nor does she ask her about the tip of the thing she saw when beloved lay down or came undone in her sleep. This is the second time this has been referenced. I have a question mark here. We do not know yet exactly what the thing is, but we will find out. So I just mark it, and it's perfectly fine to speculate for yourself what that might be, but we will be told, officially what it is later in the book. So what happens then throughout the day, this whole next page and the page after, is describing how Denver keeps beloved occupied. So Sethe goes off to work at the restaurant, and Denver, her whole purpose for the day is to do things with beloved and to take advantage of the fact that it's just the two of them. So she tells her all kinds of stories about her past and about baby Suggs, and she enlists her in all kinds of chores around the house. She tells her about Howard and Bugler, and she just tries to amuse her to keep her attention. They go outside and they do the laundry, they hang things up to dry, they take the things down. And so in this particular scene here, they're outside on a very cold day, and all the clothes they've hung up to dry have basically frozen because it's so cold. And so Denver is taking frozen underwear and towels from the line and stacking them in beloved's arms like a deck of cards because they're so rigid from being cold. And then they go back in the house. And then because they're cold, Denver suggests that maybe she would warm up some cider to sort of warm them up. And she keeps trying to think of things that she can do or say to keep beloved from trying to wait for Sethe and leave her attention. So this desire to keep beloved, engaged with her has changed Denver. And I do think it's important to mark anytime a character changes. Plotting has changed Denver markedly. Markedly is a great word to be able to use. It means significantly or noticeably. So Denver has significantly changed because now her whole focus is on plotting to keep beloved occupied. And she would say, we have to do this, and ma'am told us to do that. So she keeps her all sorts of, these are the chores we have to do today, and she keeps her occupied so that they can be together. And so there's just a lot more description about this. I mean, I think it's important just to read through some of these details and know what it is, because these could be on quiz questions, I suppose. So they're going to make hot cider. And so the cider is in the cold room, which is an area outside of the house where they keep things to stay cold. It's like their kind of refrigeration. And so they go out to the cold room to get the cider, and then they're going to bring it in the house. And beloved is needed to help. Denver says the cider is very heavy. We need to carry it together. So she brings beloved with her. And even when it's empty, it says here the cider jug is heavy. So she asks beloved to help her, even though she doesn't really need it. It does say Denver can carry it easily. So she's just manipulating all the time to keep her busy. And when they go into the cold room, they see the pallet in the middle of the floor covered with newspaper and a blanket at the foot. This is where Paul D has been sleeping, even though it is wintertime. It is noon, quite light outside. Inside, though, it's not. So inside this cold room, it's very dark. Darkness is stronger and swallows them like minnows. This is a beautiful simile. So I just made a note here. The old hunger is loneliness, and the new hunger is more of the company that Denver currently has. She just wants more and more of beloved all the time. I mean, I know I've said this like 3 times. It is just reinforced page after page in this chapter. So this is really important to Denver, which is set up to sort of create a contrast and help us understand why Denver reacts the way she does when she can't see beloved in the cold room. So it's so cold in there, it's so dark and cold in there that when they close the door, it becomes so pitch black, and Denver can't see beloved. And she says, "Where are you?" And beloved says, "Here." And then beloved says, "Come find me." Well, this puts Denver into a panic. She can't find her. She waves her arms around and squinches her eyes to separate the shadows of potato sacks, the lard can, the smoked pork. And she says, stop fooling. You know, she's really afraid. And then she tries to sort of, tempt her. You know, you want cider, don't you? You're thirsty, aren't you? Like, she's trying to like get her to come out. She doesn't want to offend. Denver doesn't want to offend her, but she also doesn't want to betray the panic that is creeping over her like hairs. So Denver's starting to panic. Eventually, she realizes she can't find her at all. There is no point in looking further, for everything in the place can be seen at first sight. Denver looks anyway because the loss is ungovernable. So when she opens the door a little bit and the light comes in, it's not a very big room. Beloved is nowhere. And so she realizes like she's gone. She's completely gone, which makes her frantic. Denver moves rapidly around, reaching, touching cobwebs, cheese, slanting shelves, the pallet interfering with each step. If she stumbles, she is not aware of it because she does not know where her body stops, which part of her is an arm, a foot, or a knee. She feels like an ice cake torn away from the solid surface of the streams, floating on darkness, thick and crashing against the edges of things around it, breakable, meltable, and cold. This is a beautiful simile. And again, Toni Morrison is using references to nature to communicate to us as readers how these characters feel. So this is just worth noting. I think this is the kind of thing a teacher might ask you to evaluate in a close read, perhaps. It is hard to even breathe. Of course, there's air out there, but she's panicked. Even if there were light, she wouldn't be able to see anything because she's crying. Just as she thought it might happen, it has. She's afraid that beloved will leave, and now she's left. Easy as walking into a room, a magical appearance on a stump, the face wiped out by sunlight, and a magical disappearance in a shed, eaten alive by the dark. And then she starts to cry, don't go back. This is worse than when Paul D came to 124 and she cried, because she cares deeply about beloved. This is much worse to lose beloved than to deal with Paul D. So Denver decides to stay in the cold house and let the dark swallow her like the minnows of light above. She won't put up with another leaving, another trick, waking up to find one brother and then another not at the bottom of the bed, his foot jabbing her spine. So she remembers when her brothers left, and she's not gonna suffer that loss again. She's gonna sit in that cold storage shed until beloved returns. So then, of course, she remembers baby Suggs leaving, and she's like, I can't handle it. Then, all of a sudden, there beloved is, and there's no sound to announce her, but there's beloved standing where before there was nobody and smiling. Denver grabs the hem of beloved's skirt. I thought you left me. I thought you went back. So she just like vanishes, and then she reappears in thin air. Beloved smiles. So, she's kind of mischievous. I don't want that place. This the place I am, which is what she says again and again. She sits down on the pallet and, laughing, lies back looking at the cracked lights above. I want you just to really pay attention to this last part, because this is becoming more symbolic than plot focused. Surreptitiously, Denver pinches a piece of beloved's skin between her fingers and holds on. She kind of wants to get back at her. A good thing she does, because suddenly beloved sits up. What is it? Asks Denver. Look, beloved says, and she points to the sunlit cracks coming through the sort of the walls of this shed. What? I don't see nothing. Denver follows the pointing finger. Beloved drops her hand. I'm like this. Denver watches as beloved bends over, curls up, and rocks. She's done this before. It's like a fetus. Her eyes go to no place. Her moaning is so small, Denver can hardly hear it. Are you all right, beloved? Beloved focuses her eyes. Over there, her face. Denver looks where beloved's eyes go. There is nothing but darkness there. Whose face? Who is it? Me, It's me. And then she's smiling again. So this is very confusing. It's meant to be confusing. It's meant to force us as readers to think beyond what's literally happening in this story. This is a supernatural moment. Beloved leaving and coming back is supernatural, but also this description is supernatural. It's showing us that Beloved represents more than just the baby ghost. This description of being in a dark place with little cracks of light is very much like being on the slave ship when the slaves came to America. It shows us that she is the ghost of many lost slaves, and even the ghost of slavery itself. So being curled up is the same as being crowded into those slave ships and just suffering, shoulder to shoulder, cold and then hot and tired and thirsty and hungry and beaten sometimes and treated so badly. So she sees all these faces of other people who have suffered on the slave ships. It is slavery itself that's being described here. So I'm sure you guys will talk about this with your teachers in class. It's also a good place to find evidence if you had to write a paper about a deeper message from this book. So we'll stop for this one today, and then I'll move on to chapter 13 tomorrow.